So here we are now, first month of January, 2024 is done. What is happening with Tesla stock, right? Typically the market and the mood is looking great, right? There's people thinking that there's not going to be a recession, interest rates are going to pop up, the Mag 7 is doing really well, but there's a lot of sentiment that is different with Tesla versus the others, right? There's a feeling that Tesla is down. It's going to stay down for the next year. So I wanted to talk to Larry Goldberg, ask him what his thinking is on the stock sentiment, but also what he's thinking about what he's expecting for the Tesla stock in the next couple of years and maybe even, of course, in future. Welcome, Larry. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Herbert. Great to be here. Tesla stock, huh?
Tesla stock, yeah. We are both long-term investors. We've seen how volatile this is, but we've also seen how it stays flat and then pops. But something's happening, right? And it just feels like there's very negative sentiment. It's been following the stock continuously for over 2 years now, and it's still like it seems hard for good news to break through because there's just a lot of negative. Now we know that there is big oil. We got big media, we got big auto. There's a lot of enemies, and that has risen as Tesla succeeds, and that is adding the wrinkle. What's your, what's your feeling about what's happening with Tesla's stock sentiment?
Well, you also have to add, the noise around X. So, Elon's acquisition of Twitter led him into more than he has been in the past, into political waters. And he has opined widely on the issues, on the political issues of the day, as they touch upon free speech, because he really acquired Twitter partly around the issue of free speech, but also partly to create a platform for payments as well as what he calls the everything app. So I think some of the noise is around that. Some of the noise is around the fact that, at the quarterly meeting, he said that this year is a year of consolidation, of a year of building up towards the big releases in 2025 and 26, and so it's a period where we're not going to see as much growth in the revenue and profits as we've seen in previous years. Now we've lived this before. We lived this when the X was introduced. That was a period where the stock really, really took a hammering. We lived it when the Model 3 was introduced. We took a terrible hammering at that point. I mean, the stock really struggled, and we're in the same situation. These are the moments where this is my opinion. This is not financial advice. I don't give financial advice. Don't do what I do. Don't listen to what I tell you I'm going to do. Think about it for yourself and the risk that you can tolerate. But these are the times that I love. I enjoy these times. I love to listen to all this negative stuff. I do argue with people about it, but I love to listen to it because it points out to me just how negative sentiment is, which means that the shares are probably representing more than full value. They probably are at a discount. So these are the best times. These are the best of times. Now, once the stock gets up there, that's a different matter. But these are good times that I like to acquire stock. So yeah, I love these times.
You're crazy, Larry. Okay, I get what you're saying though. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you answer each one of them. These are the questions that I've been hearing from the people I'm talking to, the audience members, that they're interested to know about the Tesla stock. And so I'll read out the 4 questions, but then what we'll do is we'll go one at a time. Okay, so the first one is, what's the next catalyst? What will make the stock pop? It's been flat. Luckily, this lawsuit thing that happened didn't really affect it too much. What's the next thing that might make it pop and break through? The second question is, what is the bottom? The next month or two, how low could it go compared to what happened in last year? The third question would be, what about the interest rates? When interest rates, looks like that there's going to be a series of rate cuts starting in March or May, and then it goes up to September. It's an election year. What do you think is going to happen? And the final question is, what do you think is going to happen in the second half this year and this, the following years? Okay, so let's go over the first one, which is, what will make this stock break through the sentiment? What's the next catalyst? What can make it pop?
It depends what you mean by pop. I mean, the move from $180 something to 200 and something dollars, $210, $220 is quite a considerable pop. It's, it could be as high as 20%. That kind of move could be a really good quarter with, a good investor call saying that the numbers are looking quite promising for the year, maybe more promising than we thought. That could well have that $20 to $30 pop. We saw last year the Hertz announcement move the stock quite dramatically, and we had quite a negative period. You're right, by the way. I don't remember a period this negative since, I think, production hell. I think that was the last period of true negativity, serious negativity, or maybe even the take public announcement, but that they were related to each other. So I think a pop could happen if we see a good quarter, a really good quarter. I don't think that's around the corner. I think the big pop will be, when we see a really good Cybertruck quarter, and I'm hoping the third quarter will be that type of quarter where we see a real big increase in Cybertruck revenue, Cybertruck deliveries, and some clear announcement about the backlog for Cybertrucks. So that's what I would look for. And then the other big announcement, the undoubted huge announcement that could have, a very, very significant, a 30% move in the stock, is the rollout of the next gen, maybe, a performance in Texas with the car rollout and the announcement and the pricing and delivery date schedule. That could have enormous impact. Those are the two major issues I would look for in terms of stock movement this year.
Okay. And then how low could it go, right? So last year we saw it fall all the way to $105. People said, well, the reason why that happened was because of margin calls, like a confluence of the macro environment. We have a very good macro environment. The prospects of that, as people look forward, is looking good. Generally, everybody believes that that's the case. But
everybody
and then the margin call did not look like it's happening. Sorry, what did you say?
Everybody except me.
Right. So how low could it go?
Yeah, I think the Fed missed a moment yesterday. I think the market was disappointed. I think that we could see a fairly dramatic drop in employment very quickly in the February-March timeframe, and the Fed may have to rethink itself. I don't think the Fed has really done a good job. Anyway, that besides, we could see there are one or two scenarios here. I don't think we're going to see this continuation at the current state. I think we're either going to see a very significant dip, or the Fed is going to have to pump it up. And either way, the level of uncertainty in my mind is pretty high. So I'm not as optimistic as you are, or as perhaps some other people are, about the and certainly not as optimistic as Mary Barra at General Motors is about this coming year. I don't see a 16 million car year, or even anything close to it.
So what's the bottom? What's the bottom of the stock in the next couple of months?
It could get down to that 110, 120 mark. It could. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there are multiple futures here. That would be the low point. The high point could be that 210, 220 mark. Until we see Cybertruck sales, really take off and production take off, and or the introduction of the next gen vehicle, for which I'm very hopeful on both counts, by the way, I think we could see this drift. And the drift is macro related.
Yeah, that's my third question, right? So if interest rates are cut, and it starts happening multiple cuts over the year, well, don't you think that that's going to make a good... The reason why the stock fell all of last year was because of price cuts and margin compression, and that is all associated with interest rates, as Elon has mentioned. If interest rates pop down, maybe they'll have higher margins, and you have improving margins over the course of the year, plus the cost of goods falling as well as they continue to improve that.
My anticipation is that there are going to be additional price cuts. I fully anticipate that, because in order to expand the TAM of the car, the price of the car has to go down, and they are currently continuously dropping the cost of their goods for the car, and that, I think, will lead to price cuts as they try and expand the TAM of the car. So I'm not the good news buddy of expectation here today. I just want to keep a very realistic view of how this year is going to play out. That I think that we're going to see some incredible results in 25 and 26. Yeah. But between now and the launch of the next gen, however they're going to manage the launch of the next gen, between now and Cybertruck reaching full production, I think we're in for a struggle.
Okay. And then I've got another question, but the one that I had said, fourth question, was going to be what's going to happen second half of this year and then the following years.
I don't think there's been a more difficult time to forecast the second half of the year. Again, there are two futures here. But I definitely think that the second half of this year, we're going to get visibility into next year. And that's a very positive sign. Once we start getting true visibility into next year, and if next year is as I think it's going to be, I think that could be very exciting. The other thing is, I think China is going to surprise to the upside, despite the terrible economic situation in China. I think the company is going to do very well in China this year. Tesla is going to do very well in China this year. And I think that's going to be a surprise, and particularly in the second half of this year. So I'm a lot more pessimistic about the first half of the year than I am in the second half of the year. And I think the second half of the year, we're already looking into what's going to happen in 2025 and 2026. So if the stock turns, I think that's when it's going to turn, late third quarter, definitely fourth quarter.
I got one last question for you, because I'm truly curious to hear your answer to this, as I myself is trying to figure this out. Okay, so there's a group of people, particularly institutional investors, people who follow the stock, Tesla, the technicals. I've got two people that I've interviewed that I'm going to drop those interviews this weekend. Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities, and then Mark Newton of Fundstrat. He's a technical analyst.
Right.
But what these guys say is that the stock price is telling you something. So if the stock is low and events occur and the stock doesn't pop, that tells you that that fundamentals wasn't as big as you want, because the stock price is telling you something. There's, versus, a long-term investor like me, I always think the stock price is meaningless. I wouldn't say meaningless, but you know what I'm getting at with this, which is like, I don't look at the stock price. I look at the company, the fundamentals. I figure out my own valuation of it, and I think that the market is wrong. That's why I invest, because I believe the market is not getting the story. But as the earnings show up because of these things that are happening, the stock will follow. And that's the perfect scenario for me. I think the stock is always wrong. Some people will tell you you're wrong. The stock is always right. And I'm like, I don't get you. I think differently. What's your opinion on this?
They're always wrong. The stock is the stock price is not necessarily telling you what's going to happen, because the sentiment is not tied to the potential true future of the company. The sentiment's tied to the conception of the future, and the conception is often wrong. And nothing like the 2017 production hell, people predicting the end of the world for Tesla, predicting bankruptcy, by the way. Why was the stock at the equivalent of $45 at that point? Why? So if they're right, if these guys are right that the stock is telling you something, what was it telling you then? Because a few months later, it was triple, quadruple. So I don't understand their logic. I mean, I have immense respect for Dan Ives, but how can he be saying that that's telling us something?
Yeah, there's a whole group of people who think that the market is always right.
But if you look at the stock swing on Tesla, what was right about it in March of 2017 that by March of 2018, it was like 3 times the number? How do they justify that? I remember vividly, I was tracking Bloomberg. Bloomberg was very tough on Tesla in 2017, very tough. They wrote some very scathing articles. And what they did to prove their point is they set up a VIN tracker. I don't know if you recall this. They set up a VIN tracker to show how ridiculous Tesla was, saying that they'll produce 3,000 a day. I mean, it was there's no way it could happen. I watched that VIN tracker. And as I watched it, I thought, my God, I'm underweight Tesla.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe I'm underweight Tesla. And their articles kept saying, look how bad the stock is, because it's really, really bad. And then the VIN tracker was saying, oh, they did 200 today. Oh, they did 400 today. Oh, they did 1,000 today. Delivered. So I said, I'm underweight Tesla. I've got to readjust. And I readjusted.
You did that based on fundamentals. Yeah. An actual metric. Yeah.
And so what was the stock price telling me? It was lying to me. And so, guys, you're wrong.
Yeah. I guess I have to ask them a little bit more, because I do ask the question. But it's like, obviously there's truth in what they're saying, and there's truth in what we're saying. But the way I look at it is, if the stock can be flat for many years, but then it can pop big time, not just, 10, 20%, like double, quadruple, 5 times, the 200%, then that means that the market was wrong. And now the market realized that they were wrong. And then they catch up to it, It's
not stochastic. The market in the short term, it's a weighing machine. The market in the long term is I mean, there's no doubt about it. that is the other way around, a voting machine versus a weighing machine. The short term for a single stock is not something you can really trust or take the measure of. And this is where I think their theorem breaks.
Short term, yeah.
In the short term on a single stock. Now, the short term, the market as a whole is telling us a lot, by the way. In the short term, it's not telling us where the where the economy is going to go. It's telling us what people think right now. In the long term, it proves out what really was happening in the economy. And I think that that's even more true of a single stock. It's telling us, the general impression of the buying public around that stock today. And in Tesla, that's a very dangerous measure because of the press, and you put it very succinctly. You said you've never seen it as bad as this. Well, I saw it as bad as this in 2017, but you're right. This is an incredibly bad period. And so the stock price is not a good reflection of the underlying value of the stock. But in the next 3 years, we're going to see whether we are right or whether the Tesla Q are right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this with me. That was I need to continue having more conversation about the Tesla stock. And I know you're a fundamentals person long term, but it's nice to just revisit what you're thinking every once in a while. Thank you so much, Larry. Follow him on X at Tesla Larry. Thanks, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.